Your primary types are pressure reducing and back pressure regulators. Those are the main two applications, but there's a lot of other styles that then can be fine-tuned based on the application.
Pressure reducing regulators do just like the name says. They reduce a high pressure to a low pressure. This is traditionally what people think about when they think about pressure regulators. A less common but still frequently used type of pressure regulator is a back pressure regulator. That regulator controls an upstream pressure, so it controls what's behind it. And these regulators are very often used when a minimum upstream needs to be maintained through a system, or where very fine overpressure control is needed.
Specific to those styles, you have vaporizing regulators. There's changeover regulators. You can have a higher sensitivity by having larger diaphragms. And then from a loading standpoint, you have a dome-loaded versus spring-loaded options.
Swagelok has two main series of regulators, which is a K-series and RHPS series. K-series is used usually for analytical instrumentation application, and RHPS series mainly for process applications.
The smaller K-series regulators are typically used in analytical systems, in labs. We also have the gas distribution panels, which use the smaller K-series regulators. We also have the KEV, the electrical vaporizing regulator, which is used in labs to vaporize samples. The other family of regulators that we supply is the RHPS regulators, and those are predominantly used more in process applications. That can be anything from food and drink applications, driving fire suppression systems. We have them in refrigeration systems, really any process which has a flow which needs regulation of pressure. We have other regulators, tank blanketing and pharmaceutical regulators. We have a lot of interest and use in compressed natural gas around the world. Recently, we've seen certainly an uptick in interest in regulators for hydrogen applications, and I suppose that's part of the move towards sustainable energy.
Regulator selection is really important in order to achieve the performance you want in your system or your process. The whole idea of the regulator is to provide that consistency so the process can function optimally.
Our field engineers can help customers find the right configuration which is sized properly for their application, such that they'll have the best performance suited to their application.